Nice job.
What a team.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining, both in person and online. And thank you to Subaru for continuing to be a very, very nice neighbor, helping us out as we're dealing now for 6 weeks with issues. For those of you who do not know Jameeka already, this is Jameeka Marshall. It's my pleasure to introduce her. Jameeka is now the coordinator for the Shadow the Scientist program, which is run out of UC Santa Cruz. The PI is Raja Guhathakurta, a professor at the Physics and Astronomy department there, or I guess Astronomy and Astrophysics department, yeah, get the terminology right. Before Jameeka was a Shadow the Scientist coordinator. Jameeka got her bachelor's at University of Memphis in Spanish, and then a master's in secondary education. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. And then she went on to be a high school teacher in the Memphis area. She was a high school teacher on Oahu as well, and did a science intern at the Canada-France-Hawaii telescope before coming to Gemini to do outreach and all sorts of really wonderful, awesome astrophysics things and engaging with the community. And about a year ago or so, she moved on from Gemini into our lab to her position now at UC Santa Cruz, and she's going to tell you all about why that program is so awesome and why she's so awesome.
Thank you so much, Brian, for that fantastic introduction. I would like to reiterate my sincere appreciation to Subaru Telescope for allowing us to be here, for hosting us in this wonderful space today. So yes, my name is Jameeka Marshall. I am the coordinator for the Shadow the Scientist program. It is a UC Santa Cruz program. I also want to say thank you to everyone in the Zoom audience. I really appreciate your presence today. Even though I can't actually see you on my screen, I saw your names pop up and I am grateful for your appreciation. And so when we get to the questions section, I think maybe Brian or Emma will initiate that part, but questions can go in the chat anytime actually throughout the presentation. And I'm happy to take those on if Brian points them out to me, or to address them at the end. Okay, so a little bit about Shadow the Scientist. First, Shadow the Scientist is an initiative under the CREST umbrella. Now, CREST is programs and initiatives that seek to create equity and promote diversity in STEAM fields by engaging students primarily from underrepresented groups. And, you know, critical thinking, as we know, is a huge, important factor as we go into careers and from university into careers, and especially here in Hawaii, we see how important it is to give our students the opportunity for critical thinking activities to engage in. And the CREST umbrella encompasses several programs that do exactly that. Towards the end of my presentation today, I'm grateful to say I have my colleagues and supervisors here with me virtually in the chat, and they'll be able to speak a little bit more about the CREST initiative overall. But the Shadow the Scientist is one of those initiatives. I have an amazing team, you all, and I am grateful for their support. As Brian mentioned, I have been with this amazing group of people as the coordinator for Shadow the Scientist since January, and it has been a wonderful road getting to know them, learning to work together, and learning from them all the great practices that they've had in place as I stepped into this position as the coordinator for Shadow the Scientist. And I do believe I have colleagues ready to go in the chat. I see Lindsay's smiling, wonderful face right there with that amazing UC Santa Cruz background. And so, Lindsay, please go ahead and introduce yourself, and then afterwards, Raja and anybody else who may be there, please.
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Lindsay Lawver. I use she, her pronouns. I am the CREST Associate Director. I've been working at UC Santa Cruz for about 5 years, and previously worked in the Department of Astronomy and Astrophysics at UC Santa Cruz. So that's how I got to know Raja and the rest of the team. And thanks for inviting us. Raja, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Sure. Thank you. My name is Raja Guhatakurta. I know some of the people on this call, and I've been a professor at UC Santa Cruz for nearly 3 decades. And for about half that time, the science internship program has been running. And the CREST idea and the CREST initiative was started 3 years ago. I'm happy to answer questions about that afterwards.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Raja. Thank you, Lindsay. And if any of our other colleagues join us, Roger and Lindsay, please let me know, and I would love for them to introduce themselves as well. Thank you. So we are a small but mighty team doing amazing things. And so as Raja just kind of alluded to about CREST, starting about 3 years ago, Shadow the Scientist began the summer of 2020. And we all know what we were doing during 2020, right? This is the beginning of COVID. And during this time, of course, we know it was very difficult to even work together, to even be in the same room. So when it comes to doing observations at an observatory, of course, that meant there were restrictions there as well. And you just didn't have the access to those facilities like you would normally. And so this was the pajama mode of observing, Raja calls it. And I love it because you're in the comfort of your own home, you're just relaxing, and you're on Zoom. Where Raja realized that that was an amazing opportunity to actually share that observing experience, the research experience, an authentic experience with anyone who was interested in the public, with students, with the public in general. And that is how Shadow the Scientist got started. Now, I really want to emphasize that this is authentic research. And of course, the example I give is observing with professional astronomers on world-class telescope. And of course, NORLab facilities are absolutely amazing, spread out around the world. So Shadow the Scientist started in 2020, that summer, and Brian and Roy Gal, and I'll speak about both of them a little bit later here, actually lend their expertise to getting things started with Raja. They were partners brought on just after the beginning of Shadow the Scientist. And later last year in August of 2022, the Shadow the Scientist received a very generous $720,000 grant from the Rising Science Foundation to help fund all of our outreach activities. And we are absolutely grateful for this support. Now, if you, and hopefully you will, when you register for a Shadow the Scientist session, you'll see when you get the confirmation email, it says at the very bottom, we would appreciate it if you took a few moments of your time to complete a follow-up survey, and it goes on to say how this gives feedback to our funders about the importance of these kinds of initiatives. Well, this is our funders. This is the Rising Science Foundation. So when you see that in your confirmation email, that is why we really want to convey to our supporters how important it is and how broadly we are reaching out to communities, not just locally, but around the world. Yes, okay, so here we are, your very own Brian Lameau. So we are absolutely grateful for the local support as we set up the process of scheduling Shadow the Scientist sessions. Now, we all bring different experiences with us. Your very own Dr. Brian Lameau, of course, has done, I don't know how many Shadow the Scientist sessions, Brian, a good dozen maybe?
Just about.
Yes. And so Brian has so much experience, not only doing the engagement, but also all of the details that go into getting prepared for a session, as does Dr. Roy Gal, who is the outreach coordinator at the University of Hawaii's Institute for Astronomy, excuse me. Their emails are there. And of course, with Brian, right, in the NORLab community, you can feel free to reach out to him at any time for support or questions. And of course, you'll have my email and Raja's, we'll get those to you throughout the presentation. But you have right here your colleague as a first stop when you're interested in finding out more about Shadow the Scientist. And so now when we go forward and I talk about the STS team, that will include myself, Raja, Brian, and Roy. Okay, so that support from Brian and Roy is absolutely vital. And here, of course, the importance of this is that they both have experience working here locally with our community populations. They're aware of the various challenges that need to be taken into consideration sometimes as we do things. And that kind of local knowledge is absolutely invaluable. And of course, the expertise that they bring is one of the things I hope will make you feel very comfortable as you think about collaborating with us on hosting a Shadow the Scientist session. So what do you think about when I say the word community? And I had to think about this. What is community? Well, certainly we're looking here at the NORLab community. You're spread out around the world and in different countries, but you're still a community. What connects you? What is it that makes you feel like a community? Well, of course, broadly speaking, a community is a group of people who are united because they share a sense of belonging. They have shared histories, skills, values, cultures. Maybe you also have similar trades. You live in the same places. But one thing that I didn't really think about when I thought of community was social groups and work groups. That's also a community, right? And so we are a part of many different communities. And I really wanted to highlight that before we get into what engagement is, because it's not just your local community right here, the NORLab community, the astronomy community, the Mauna Kea community, right? We also have the community of scientists. You are from someplace, maybe you're from here, maybe you're from abroad, that community, you're connected to that. What did you study? What's your degree in? Maybe you're an engineer, so maybe you are part of the community of engineers as well too. So I want us to think about that community is a very broad, it's a very broad term, and it's very inclusive. So as we go forward talking about engagement, please think about the various communities that you can engage with, especially those that are unique to you and your situation. Maybe the school you came from, or the program that you were in that got you here today. Maybe you want to do some engagement with them. Think about them as we go forward. Okay, so community engagement. Well, now I'm just looking out into the room right here with me, and even though I can't see the people in Zoom right now, I saw your names pop up on the screen earlier. So I know that I have done some engagement and outreach activities with so many of you. I'm looking at Jameeka right here. Just had led the successful Tanabata Festival with so many people. It had such a great community feel. Outreach and engagement is so important. So what does it mean to engage? What does that even mean? So first I want to point out, of course, you recognize this picture. And again, I'm looking out into the audience. This is NORLab's very own CE. And of course, this is from the Journey Through the Universe program. Community engagement is getting out there and connecting with the people that live around us, or virtually in our communities as well too. So community engagement really takes place when we are working collaboratively together to address different issues and to find a way to solve them. Now, in the outreach sense and engagement sense for education, really, and for bringing people into different experiences around science, And because so many people have not had that experience, it can be intimidating. So you are that front line. It's your smile, it's your handshake, it's the way you're dressed, it's the bright colors that you wear that can really make people feel comfortable. So engagement looks different in many different ways, but it is essential to building and improving vibrant communities because it encourages all of us to identify and address concerns and opportunities. And certainly supporting our young people and our early career scientists is something that I think we can all agree is valuable. So Astro 2020. So the decadal, I think, came out maybe a year later than it normally would have. I think it came out in 2021, a little bit after that. And if you're not familiar with the Astro 2020 decadal, this is something that comes out every year. And this one is for astronomy and astrophysics, but other areas of science have them. And in this very long, exhaustive document, there's so much that was talked about here. But for the first time in this decadal survey, they included a portion on the state of the profession. And this had never been done before. And I personally had never really read through a decadal report before at all. I'd only heard of them, but that portion, the state of the profession, was so intriguing to me that made me download the whole PDF. It was incredibly insightful, and as many of you here probably have done, you've read through it and you've seen, of course, the mentions of Mauna Kea and communities and ways that we can improve our community connections and cooperation. And that really is the thrust of what the state of the profession really is talking about in this decadal study. And it really highlights the need specifically for astronomical communities to expand their community engagement efforts beyond the current levels. So we're already doing a lot. NORLAB has amazing programs. You go out wherever your communities are, close to your observatories, far away, just the local communities connected to it. The communities connected to the people who are in the observatories, your staff, because the people drive the research. The people are the main thrust of the science, of this experience. Yep. And so here the decadal is highlighting that it's really important to have an emphasis on broadening access. What does that even mean, broadening access? Sure, yes, physical access. It can be challenging to get up to Mauna Kea. It can be challenging to go up to Cerro Patron. It can be difficult to get up to Kitt Peak, depending on the weather or your age or your physical abilities. I have challenging me sometimes, and it can be really hard to go up, right? I see a 9 out there, it can be. And I have been at the summit of Mauna Kea, I've had that privilege many times. It doesn't mean that sometimes it's not hard, right? Sometimes I still just can't make it. So when we're talking about access, it is not just physical access, but also the exposure. We know that being exposed to a wide range of careers and opportunities really stimulates the mind. But I know I'm from the South, I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm grateful to have attended a school, the Hutchinson School for Girls, that really gave us opportunities to be exposed to a wide range of opportunities. But I was really lucky. I'm grateful for that. So many students do not get that. And as Brian mentioned, I had the honor of teaching in Waianae and Nanakuli under Darren Pilialoha. And I got to see firsthand what I saw in Memphis, which is the lack of exposure that so many in our communities deal with all the time. Are they interested in meeting you and learning more about science? Yes. Are they interested in trying to find out if their career goals or university goals align with that? Maybe, but have they even met any of us? No. They know in theory some ideas about how science works, but it was really just kind of fluffy ideas in their head because they didn't know. They'd never had any access. And again, Brian mentioned that I had done an internship at Canada France Hawaii Telescope, which I'm so grateful for. They're led by Doug Simons at the time. And my students there, they had never even had the opportunity to come to Mauna Kea. And I'll speak about Mauna Kea Scholars really quickly here just to accentuate this point. And again, Mauna Kea Scholars is another engagement and outreach program that is absolutely successful, headed by Canada France Wide Telescope. And they were able to bring my students and some of their families over so that they could actually step foot in an observatory, so they could actually look into the face of an astronomer, that they could actually ask someone doing research a question. How do we do that? What is that instrument? How do you make this? It was awe-inspiring. It was awe-inspiring. So this is what the decadal is speaking to. It's speaking to the wholeness of our human communities. And here it says the pursuit of science and scientific excellence is inseparable from the humans who animate it. You are the humans who animate this science for us. This is why we need you out here sharing what it is that you do. So I'm going to come back to the Astro 2020 decadal in a bit, because here what they really are emphasizing is broadening access, removing the barriers to participation, and creating a safe, welcoming, and inclusive environment. And I will say that collaborating with Shadow the Scientist to have sessions that share not only your passion and your enthusiasm about what you do, but actually what you're doing. I can see what you're doing. That hits all of these, checks all these marks, exactly what the decadal is asking us to do. So working with the Shadow the Scientist program will definitely expand your community engagement efforts. And I'm going to show you how this will broaden access, how it lowers the barriers, not only for the participants, but also for you as scientists who have an innate desire to do outreach and engagement sometimes, but as we know, there can be barriers to that. Funding, time. Oh, you're going to have an engaging activity, hands-on. Oh, you got to pack the things to take with you. These are things I love. I love those kinds of activities. You know, but sometimes that can be prohibitive. And even though you have the motivation and desire to do it, sometimes you have to pass up on some of those engagement opportunities. Shadow the Scientist gives another way to engage in a way that maybe offers a different, more easier approach to engagement and outreach. So let's look at that. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll see that collaborating with us allows you to take those next steps to getting closer to the desires of the committee who put together this Day of the Profession of for the Decadal and Astro 2020, which really is to broaden and make the field of astronomy much more inclusive. And by doing that, tap so much talent that we need to help drive innovation and creativity. So I am very, very, very happy to say that our current partners up to today are here. Subaru Telescope, of course, is one of them. Again, these partnerships allow us to make these sessions happen. Without the support of these organizations, without the support of the staff, without the support and buy-in of the telescope support staff, we really couldn't make this happen. So again, you all are appreciated. We appreciate you. We appreciate the support that you all give to us to allow this to happen. So we have Subaru Telescope. We've also hosted sessions with Keck Observatory, and I'll talk about that a little bit soon, a little bit later in just a moment, the Lick Observatory, and we've had one session with NORLab almost a year ago, it was in October, and we're certainly looking forward to having another NORLab session. This is with Gemini North, and it was me, Brian, and Zach, who I believe I saw in the audience. Zach really led that effort in the control room. I'll show you our YouTube channel. Feel free to check that out, but it was absolutely amazing. Also, Keck Observatory, as I said, Gemini, and Lick Observatory. So right now, as of today, we've had 56 sessions. 56 sessions. That's reached hundreds of not just students, but educators and science enthusiasts. and scientists just like you. All right, so with Shadow the Scientist, we have, several flavors of how we engage with the public. We, as the team, we want to support you and sharing your science the way you want to. So I'll go into this a little bit more in detail later if you ask, but we have two different sessions. We have open sessions, which the whole public, the whole worldwide is open to come to. Now, this is going to be advertised on our webpage. We're going to do social media to support that. We're going to send emails out to those who are subscribed to our mailing list to advertise these open sessions. Now, these can be conducted however you want, and I'll talk about that, the control that you have over how you interact with the audience. But we also have dedicated sessions, and dedicated sessions are ones that are targeted for a specific audience. And so here you can see that we have had the honor of connecting far and wide with students and educators and scientists alike, from Mexico to Colombia, high schools in India, here at Kashmir and Gujarat, high schools in Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and as well as high schools in Palestine and Israel. Raja, just a bit earlier, when he was doing his introduction, spoke briefly about the science internship program. I'm hoping that he or Lindsay will follow up a little bit about that. It just ended in the mid-August, and I had the pleasure and honor of welcoming our students from Palestine and from Israel. It was an amazing experience for them and for myself. So just building connections, even through programs that are connected to Shadow the Scientist, because these are all programs that are engaging our students and our community in the scientific effort. So open sessions. Open sessions, really, again, open sessions are just so much fun to do because you never know who's going to join. Here, I'm just highlighting a session that actually is one of your colleagues was in, hosting Eric Ping. This also included Joel Rodiger, Lisa, Raja, of course. Yes, and they are using the ESI instrument here. This is one of the things that I absolutely love is the collaboration, the collaborative efforts that we have in science. And this is a great example for the community at large. Just the way you are as scientists and the way you interact is a different way than so many people do on their regular everyday basis. They're not used to collaborating. They're not used to working with people. Different ideas sometimes can be really challenging, but as scientists, that's something that you really do every day, all the time. Collaborations are huge. Just look at a paper. And there's like 100 names on there. I'm always so impressed, and sometimes I actually try to look on there and see how many people's names I actually recognize. Have you done that? Have you done that? Yeah, you have. Okay. Charlie's nodding. Thank you, Charlie. Yes, and so open sessions really allow you to reach out to everyone. Dedicated sessions again are the ones that we will not actually promote on our webpage. We're not going to send an email to our people who are registered on our mailing list for this, because this is for a specific group. You have control over who you interact with for shadow sessions and how. That's really what I want to emphasize here. And maybe at the end, Brian may speak about this particular section. I am so honored to be a part of an initiative that connects people through their shared interest in science across all kinds of potential barriers like language. This was the first Shadow the Scientist session that was in the Gujarat language. And this was, oh my gosh, this was just an amazing session. I really don't want to get into it too much. I'll let Brian give the accolades to Dr. Ekta Shah, who this was their motivation. They were home from school over the break and just really wanted to share what they did in astronomy at UC Davis with their community, who just because of location, funding, all of those things, lack of internet, just That's not something they could really ever do unless they came here, which we know is just really challenging. So Dr. Shaw suggested that we may try a shadow session, and it was the most successful session that we've had so far, over 300 people. And that's just the sign-in. There were kids in the sessions, there were older people in the sessions, we had physicists, we had different kinds of scientists there, we had classes there. It was amazing, and all because Ekta wanted to connect with her community where she was from. So this is why I really want us to consider and think about what communities are important to us. What communities are you connected to? So the benefits of hosting a shadow session. Well, I've just talked about several of them. The reach of our sessions are growing daily. Not only would it be, if you're scheduling a session that you're going to share with the whole NORLab community, for example, that's a lot of people you're connected to, schools, universities. But with the Shadow of the Scientists, we are actually going to amplify that reach. That's one of the many benefits. I think, though, the one that really sticks out to me, that really makes the Shadow of the Scientist experience, this kind of engagement experience different, is that we're going to synergize with the work that you're already doing. So there's nothing new to do. There's nothing different really to do. We're going to join you virtually, come hang out next to you, see what you're working on, listen to you describe what it is that you're doing, why, what's the goal of it. What's the outcome once you finish doing that? You are in your own work environment, which hopefully you're familiar with. You feel safe there. You're comfortable. This is a space that you're in all the time. Or maybe it's a lab that you're not in quite as frequently, but you certainly have experience being in there. The point is, you don't really have to step outside of what you're already doing every day to host a Shadow of the Scientist session. That's what I really want to emphasize. Yes, there are some logistical items with planning, and we can look into that quickly at the end. But for the most part, we are going to join you. We are shadowing you to get that experience. We want to sit next to you virtually, very quiet, send you little messages here and there about what's going on, but the science is paramount. We are not going to interrupt what you're doing, for example, an observing session. If something happens and there's a fault, for example, we're just going to watch you deal with that. That's authentic science. That's real experience that we get to see and understand how, not only how you deal with it, but we get to see you interact with it. You interact with the telescope staff, you interact with your colleagues on it. You're talking about the instruments. We're seeing the readouts on the screen. We are fully immersed in this experience with you. I love that. That's an authentic experience. So these other benefits are also amazing. A great introduction to the engagement experience. I remember my very first time going out doing outreach and engagement, putting those things together. And that was years ago. It still doesn't mean that sometimes I don't get nervous, as I said before, get a little bit anxious. But what helps me is when I introduce somebody else to the experience, and it's so much fun. And I want them to feel like this is something doable for them, that this is not something out of their reach, that it's not gonna require too much for them to put into before they can actually fully engage. So a much lower barrier for participation. So let's say, for example, you may have an intern or grad student on your research team. We want them to know and really be vested in the value of outreach and engagement, but engagement here specifically. And so I do want to highlight that for graduate students, we do have funds to pay an honorarium for their time that they contribute to hosting the Shadow of the Scientist sessions with you as part of your research team. This is really important to build that value up as early as possible. And this small incentive, we hope, will allow you to, when you're thinking about hosting a session, allow you to be more inclusive in who you have on your hosting team. Right? So not just your scientists, your colleagues, but students who are rising up to that occasion as well. You build team cohesion. Yes, because you are all together sharing the work that you do, different aspects of the work that you do. It's absolutely an effective recruitment tool. I was just thinking about science conferences time coming up. How many of you are going to science conferences coming up in the next few months or the beginning of the year? Oh, I see some hands. Yes, right? So when we're going out to science conferences, of course, you're going to be talking about the wonderful work that you're doing and your colleagues, but we're also engaging with students, with colleagues, and maybe you want to bring some people over to your organization. NORLab is constantly out at conferences. You and your scientists are making sure the NORLab name is out there and that they know this is a diverse and welcoming place for them to be at. So consider being at a science conference and then possibly having to deepen that experience by offering a Shadow the Scientist session with, say, one of your astronomers that evening, or the engineering team who's looking at a particular instrument, for example. You're trying to schmooze some engineering students to sign up for your internship program, or you just heard some amazing poster presentations and you really want them to consider coming over to be with your organization, to bring those skills over. A Shadow the Scientist session can really show off not only what you're doing, but what you, your colleagues, and your organization as a whole can offer them. Great recruitment tool. And of course, as scientists, you're reaching out for grants and you're doing proposals for projects that have a wide range of benefits and can impact a variety of people and groups. Shadow the Scientist sessions can really help you with this broader impact component that can be a part of the requirements for some of the work that you may be doing that you're looking for funding for. The reach of Shadow the Scientist right now, as I already talked about, is already around the world, and that's just going to increase, especially if we are partnering with NORLab. You touch so many communities. We want to help you not only continue to engage with the communities that you are and deepen that engagement, but possibly also to extend that even further beyond where NORLab facilities are, maybe to where NORLab staff are from, to where the science is maybe sometimes not as well explained, but they could really, really use some connection to the scientific process and to actually being able to talk to scientists and have that access. This is the important part of the broader impact component. It's not just that the work that you and your colleagues are doing are in a vacuum. No, it definitely has an impact. And hopefully you all have had a sense of the impact that your work has had on your local communities and maybe even on your work community, hopefully, but certainly further abroad in your local communities too, because what you do matters. What we do matters. It does. Yes, and so of course we have diversity, equity, inclusion efforts, which are absolutely important. We all represent so many backgrounds, speaking another language, being from abroad, maybe being tall, different ways that we all represent diversity. And so again, our sessions really speak to that. We're trying to reach out to everyone, but especially underrepresented and underserved groups. Again, this speaks directly to some of the points that the Astro 2020 Decadal highlighted. I left this at the end, at the bottom here, but this is a huge benefit. When you work with us, with the Shadow the Scientist team, to host a session, you're going to be supported throughout the whole process. As again, I pointed out our support not only from Rhonda and his years of experience, but your very own Brian Lamone and Roy Gow. When you're getting ready for these sessions, the support that you need is right there. So you have a question on, okay, I'm ready to get started, but I'm not sure, how do I share my screen again? How do I do the things that come up at the last minute because you know how to do stuff. You are familiar with setting up your laptop and doing your work, but sometimes it just gets some nerves sometimes when you're doing something a little bit different or something new. Don't worry about that. We are here to support you. If you have a question on, how do I get started with Shadow the Scientist? I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. If you have a question about how to interact with the participants, we have guidelines on our webpage that can help you with that. And of course, we are available via email at all times from the beginning to the end of this process. We want you to feel supported all the way through. You're not on your own. Okay, so how do I host a shadow session? Well, if you're on Zoom, go ahead and grab that QR code there. That's just going to take you to our webpage. I'm going to go ahead and click on this really quickly. Okay, so how do you get started? Well, you get started by contacting us. You have Brian's email address, you have Roy's, you have mine. But let's say maybe you can't get to those immediately. You can come right here to our webpage right here. If you're interested in hosting a session, click right here for more information. We have guidelines, general guidelines on how to host a session, and those best practices here. And here's also a form where you can send in your request to host a session. When we get that request form, I will liaise with Brian and with Roy, of course, Roger, the STS team, to follow up with you and move forward with scheduling your session. So what's that process? So after you've contacted us and you have submitted the request, really the main things you need to do is decide what aspects of your work do you want to share? Like, what do you love? What do you find fascinating that you really wish you could share, but it's just really challenging because of where you work or the work that you're doing? Maybe you're in a clean room, you just can't have people coming in. Being on the outside looking in, it's not quite the same. It's not quite the same experience. So I want you all to think about, what aspect of your work would you share in your first Shadow the Scientist session? So once you have that in mind, well, that's really the main thrust of it. You're going to then put out the details. We have a planning document, a template that you simply fill in with your information, your colleagues who may participate, what shadow experience you want to share with us, with the STS community, the colleagues, again, who may participate, and then, of course, getting ready to just engage with the participants. That's really it. It really is that simple. Because we support you the whole way through, there's not a lot for you to do. I think one thing that takes some extra thought is we will ask you to give us a session description, for example, here. That may be the most that you would need to do. Because we want to advertise and promote your science with your voice. We want to use your voice. But outside of that, that's it. So the information that's here, the date, the time, this is all information that you're going to give me. And as you see, we can check out here, we have coming up 2 sessions. In fact, on Friday, one with Dr. John O'Meara, the Deputy Director and Chief Scientist of the WMKEC Observatory, coming up on Friday at 7 p.m. And it's going to 9. Most of our sessions last a couple of hours, but that's something that you can also change. If you want it to be an hour, that's okay. We really want to tailor the experience for you. Who do you want to engage with? How long do you want that engagement to be like? That's up to you. You control those. And so when I post this information, I do put it in GMT because, as I said, we are trying to reach around the world. And with the information that you give me, I then do the rest of the groundwork. As I said, you're supported the whole time. So the Shadow the Scientist team is going to set up your session. You'll get the registration link from us once that's set up. Everything will be posted on the website for you. after you give me the information here in your planning document, there's nothing else for you to do except to really look forward to your session. We will take care of the promotion. We will take care of putting this also on Eventbrite. We've gotten a lot of exposure on Eventbrite, and I'm really been surprised, but it's an effective promotion tool. And so that's something we will take care of as well for you. We ask for an image so that we can help promote your session with some visual stimulus. Pretty pictures are always amazing. That always gets you. And of course, you all at NorLab have an amazing graphics team, a graphics department that really creates not only amazing and engaging images, but really amazing and deep videos too, and articles that really showcase the wide range of science results that NorLab is actually contributing to. This is amazing. I want to see your names up here soon. So let me get back here. Oh gosh, okay, so 10 minutes, sorry about that. Okay, so let me just go to best practices. Do want to give my colleagues Raja and Lindsay a bit of time to share just before we take questions. So I'm going to go through this last bit a little quickly. Best practices for hosting a session. Well, of course, the first thing we're going to encourage you to do is talk to your team. Of course, you can host a session on your own as an individual, and that's amazing. People have done that, and it's no problem. That's great. You have total control. But if you are working with a team, this is a collaborative effort, well, you definitely want to make sure that everyone is aware of your plans and any roles they may have, if any, besides being there to support you. And so we definitely suggest designating, if possible, at least one person of your team to interact with the members of the audience in the chat. Again, the science is paramount. We don't want to take your attention away from that. So if you are able to have another colleague interact with our participants in the chat, that's great. If not, that's okay. You let us know that at the beginning of your session that you're going to interact with us when you have the time. That's also in our guidelines. Our participants know when they register that this shadow experience has as science the most important goal. That is what we are highlighting, the scientific experience. And so they know the only time that they're going to interact with you is when you have the time. So there's no pressure to answer questions when it pops into the chat. You don't have to worry about that because they are already aware that your primary focus is on the science. And for us, our main focus is watching you and learning from you. Of course, you want to introduce yourself and any colleagues when we start the session. And I would encourage you, I would encourage you, if you feel comfortable with it, to reach out to participants and maybe ask them if they would like to introduce themselves verbally or put their intro in the chat or say a little bit about themselves. That's up to you. That's up to you. Again, the experience is going to be tailored for you. Once we start the session and introduce you, you then have control of the meeting, of the session. You can begin and end when you're ready. It's up to you how you create the experience for us. And this is what I really love. You really have almost total control. The one thing, of course, that we expect out of everyone is that there will be respectful interactions. When you have the, sorry. Yeah, so when you have when you get the confirmation email when you register for a session, or if you're hosting a session and I send you the link, you have to still register as the host even still. And when you do that, you will see the list of rules of engagement, our etiquette for shadow sessions. This speaks to the safe and inclusive and comfortable part of the of the experience, of the STEM experience that the decadal speaks to. We really only want people there who are going to be respectful, who respect the people who are speaking and each other. Differences of opinions, different perspectives really matter. It really does. And these sessions can sometimes be for people their first time being exposed to someone who has really different thoughts than they do on a topic. It really can be. This is life-changing. It's absolutely powerful. And we need to know how to behave in those kinds of situations. How do we treat each other with civility so that we are all feel that our voices matter and that we matter, because we all do. All right, and so for an observing session, I would also certainly recommend as a best practice, because as we know, weather happens, all kinds of things happen right when your session is about to start. Telescope's about to open, you're all excited, and I don't know, it's clouds or something happens. Oh, and so we do recommend that you have prepared in advance some material that you can share in case weather happens, in case things happen. But that again is a part of the experience that we are learning from you, because astronomical observations depend on the weather. This is something that is a part of your everyday. Share it with us. Lean into it. Lean into it. Lean into it. All right, and so I do in this last minute or two want to also point out that Shadow the Scientist sessions are a great complement to your already outstanding programs that you do at NORLab, and also just the community in general. Your engagement with the indigenous culture, indigenous science, this is so important, and the decadal speaks directly to that. And I apologize that I didn't have a QR code for the decadal study, but if you have not read it, please definitely grab it. So the different ways of engagement and the different communities that we engage with, again, are really represented here in your lab with all that you do. Journey Through the Universe, led here by the Gemini North staff, reaches thousands of students in this almost 2 decades of successful events throughout Hawaii. And I'm absolutely proud and honored to have contributed to those experiences. Viaje Universo, Teen Astronomy Cafe, you have your visits back. Now that we're post-ish COVID, you can come now to visit the facilities. A Globe at Night program, the Kick Peak Visitor Center, Astro Day. Can you imagine what it would be like to have a shadow session scheduled after, for example, you have a group come to visit you at Kick Peak, or a group that comes to visit at Gemini, they come to the control room, and then they see you later in a shadow session. Well, they've met a scientist now. They've been where you work, and now they get to see what you do, what you actually do as you're doing it. This is an amazing way to really deepen and cement those initial kinds of relationships. Whew, I'm sorry, my throat is getting just a little bit dry. And we want to help you extend your already successful engagement programs. So reach out to us. How can we help you further your programs? Now, I'm going to stop right here. You've been amazing. I'm going to stop right here and actually go to this last slide, just a moment, with all of our email addresses on it. Another QR code that takes you to our Shadow of the Scientist webpage. I am looking to hear from you. Send me an email, send Brian an email, send Raj an email. Roy, talk to us. How can we help you share the amazing work that you do with the community? NORLab has an amazing support system. We have an amazing outreach team to support your efforts already. So much is there to help you engage when you're ready. I'll be looking for your email. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jameeka, for a wonderful talk and for getting us all excited about community and engagement. Are there any questions in the room or online?
Yeah, thank you for that great talk.
Thank you.
I'm just curious about what is a typical session looks like? For example, how many people is it limited to? Like, do you have like a sort of what kind of setup?
Great question. You know what? I will defer that to Brian, who has, I can answer that, but as a host and as a participant from in these shadow sessions, I would like Brian to give the first go at that answer, then I'll follow up.
So we don't, so Zoom has an inherent limit for the number of people. I think that's 300-ish. And Jameeka mentioned the Gujarati session that my postdoc led. We had about 300 people, and we actually had to do a second session just to get everybody in there. And I think there was about 150 Brian Lamos because we had a funny mix up with the link. So yeah, so engaging Brian Lamos across the world. So that's atypical. Normally we have somewhere around 30 to 50 people, again from all over the world, and as Jameeka said, people are very respectful over the chat, and we engage as we are able. So we're doing our normal observing, and then there's plenty of downtime usually in astronomy. And so then in your natural downtime, you say, okay, let's look at the chat, or you ask people for questions, and that's the time in which you engage. And maybe every once in a while, like you're talking while you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna start the exposure, da da da. And then people come back and say, wait, so what do you mean, like start the, what does that even mean? And so yeah, that's typically how things go. That's the cadence.
Yes, thank you.
But it does depend on whether you're doing classical night or a Q observing. So the Gemini North session was quite a bit different. And so it's malleable, and it can be defined however you want to define it.
Yes.
The session must be included from the Zoom chat. How many shuttle sessions have not involved semi-runs?
Knut, so good. I'm so thankful that you're here, Knut. How many have not involved observing sessions? Okay, that's a great question. Thank you so much. Well, Shadow Scientist started, of course, as Brian said, he's the chair, he was just stepped down as the chair of the Astronomy and Astrophysics Department at UC Santa Cruz. Of course, is a professor there for decades. He said almost 30 years overall for this experience. And so our session started with astronomy. And while we are very astronomy heavy still, we are reaching beyond astronomy, of course, to engage scientists in a whole range of STEM fields. So all of our sessions, I believe, up to this point have been observing sessions. Raja, can you correct me if I'm wrong? Have all of our sessions up to this point been observing sessions?
I believe they have. Sometimes we've been observing the underside of clouds, of course. And so on those nights when we've been shut down due to weather, we've still gone ahead and explained what observations we would have conducted had the skies been clear.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Great questions. Thank you, Knut. Other questions? Yes,
Thank you for the talk. I have 2 questions.
Yes.
Number one, about closed session. How do you select schools? This is my first
question. So as the host, it's whatever school you want to connect with. It's totally up to you. We are here to support your drive for engagement.
So you connect many Colombia, South America, or some African school. So the scientists selected.
Yes, exactly. Also, sometimes we get requests for sessions. So once we've done some sessions with some of the educators, for example, when we go to conferences. Roger just came back actually, and one of our other colleagues, Anand, just came back from a long engagement trip in India, for example. And so now once we go out and talk to people about the programs, then we reach out when there are potential open sessions and get them engaged so that when they are wanting a session for themselves, for just their students, we're happy to do that. Absolutely, and we are looking to expand our communities too.
My second question is open session. through Zoom, many minors expose their faces and talks. So when they sign up, do you have any system for approval by parents or?
Oh, that's a great question. We don't have approval in that process by parents, but there is a registration process, and so every person has their own unique email Zoom session access link that's connected to their email. I would hope that if we're engaging with students, that their parents or guardians are there, and so can give them guidance on how to interact virtually with the public, or if it's a closed session with their school, that's not something we really have to worry about. But we do speak to that in our rules of engagement, our etiquette. We do specify, I think maybe it's around number 5 or 6, that because these are public sessions, if it's an open session, that you would be, as minors, exposed out there to adults, and that's not something we want. And so we do encourage in those suggested rules of engagement to use a nickname so that your public name isn't, your actual name isn't shown. And we also encourage young people to keep the video off as well too, to help protect their privacy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Roger, did you want to add something to that?
No, Jameeka's covered it. I was going to, but Jameeka's covered it perfectly.
Same for me, yeah.
Thank you, Roger.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any other last quick questions before we wrap up?
I just have a question because I have some ideas about brevity and I need to present it to the scientific community in a more face-to-face way rather than I publish papers.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm thinking about, how can I use your system to gather a group of students that want to learn something about theoretical astronomy or theoretical physics and apply to galaxies and cosmology.
Oh, that's a,
There's no observatory, but I use data from galaxies.
Oh, I see. So this would be like a data-driven session. You'd have the data and you'd be sharing it with them?
Yes.
I see. Roger, would you like to speak to that? How can we go about doing engagement from that perspective?
No, I that's a great question. We haven't, so far we've, as Jameeka said, we've been in telescope sessions, but really any moment of research, any moment of research in any subject, really not only in the sciences, can lend itself to a session. The way we would go about this is if you wrote up a paragraph in non-technical terms on what topic you would cover and what you'd be talking about during that session, we would advertise that to our mailing list. We have a large mailing list of schools and outreach groups, and we would take it from there to see who signs up. If we did a dedicated session with a particular school, we could do that, or we could just announce this as an open session.
This sounds a little promising.
I thank you. Yes, thank you so much, Raja, for that clear response here, because I was trying to pull up an example here of where we're interacting with students and answering questions and things. And I know that's still an observing session, but can kind of give you a sense of what that interaction could feel like. What is your name?
Furman Oliveira.
Furman Oliveira.
Oliveira.
Oliveira. I would love to get an email from you. I would be happy to even meet with you in person, and maybe if Brian's available at some time too, so that we can discuss that further. We can also schedule a meeting with Raj and the rest of the STS team and Roy to help you get that planned out. We would love to help support you in doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's thank Jameeka again, and hopefully we'll all see you on the shadow session sometime.